This is the story's true protagonist.
Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave is still over a month away, but Eshmel was already the most controversial character in the game. And the weirdest part is we barely know anything about him. Why is that? That's what we're going to cover today in some good old fortune telling. Eshmel was first shown in the second trailer we got for Fortune's Weave, but other than their looks, we basically got no information. He never showed up in the gameplay or the story, even while a lot of other characters started getting profiles published. Only in the August trailer did he first show up, and it became clear just what their role would be. It looks like we will start off the game with Eshmel in a doomed Dagda, and travel back in time to recruit help to defeat the big bad. That help being the four protagonists, Leda, Dietrich, Theodora, and Kai. For a lot of people, Eshmel is likely going to fulfill their number one wish for the game, while for a lot of others, he is what they're least looking forward to. Eshmel looks like what we generally call a silent avatar or self-insert character. They are meant to represent the player within the story, which is why they're customizable. You can set their name, their gender, and even customize their looks. By the way, I'm using the term avatar, self-insert, and other words like it interchangeably for this video. I know they technically mean slightly different things, but for the purposes of this discussion, they're similar enough where I don't think it's relevant enough to distinguish between them. We've had these types of characters for ages now, with varying customizability, and they all fulfill the same purpose. But if you're an ancient immortal being like me, you know that there was a time where Fire Emblem did not have a character like this at all. In fact, until the DS era, we really never had one. They are more of a recent thing. This era divide is important because I think when you got into the series plays a huge part in whether you're expecting an avatar and liking an avatar in a new Fire Emblem game. People who started with the older games are largely going to be fine without one, since it was never a part of the series' core identity back then. But if your first game was Awakening, or Fates, or probably most commonly nowadays Three Houses, this type of character is a staple to you. Unless you went back in time to play the older entries, it's pretty likely you've never gone without. I hesitate to call this divide a split between new and old fans because, I'm sorry to tell you my dear longtime viewers, at this point Fire Emblem Awakening is like 50 years old. This is no longer about old fans versus new fans, or veterans versus newbies. We're going to have to be historians about this and use eras instead. At some point, people who got into the series with Three Houses are going to get veteran discounts, and that's just something we have to live with. So, how big of a difference can one self-insert character make? Well, they seem to heavily dictate the way the games are written. Intelligent Systems likes to put these avatar characters on a pedestal at the center of the universe, which has a ripple effect across the game that I personally do not always find enjoyable. The character often has some kind of high position in the game's society. For example, Alir is literally the divine dragon. Byleth is the host to the progenitor goddess Sothis. Corrin is the spill between the Hoshidan and Norian royal families. Other characters will often talk to the avatar with a lot of reverence that to me often feels unearned.
The divine dragon looked at me!
It makes sense in universe for the aforementioned reasons, but that does not make it interesting writing. To me, it feels like the game's writers are praising the player to make them feel good about themselves. The dialogue also feels stifling when this protagonist is a silent one, like Byleth and, for what it seems, Eshmel. While other characters have fully voiced lines, the avatars are often dialogue boxes chosen by the player, so what you're hearing will sound like a character talking to a brick wall. The dialogue boxes can give the player some sense of agency if they have different options to pick from, but there's almost never a real effect on the story. And often enough, the devs have the gall to give us just a single dialogue option to choose from. And I have to ask, what's even the point then? My best guess is that it allows you to give the character their own voice, maybe in your head, or maybe you say their line out loud. That's what I'm kind of forced to do when I'm playing these games for my channel, so that it's not just deadly silent when you're listening to the conversation. But then I really do not understand why you're hiring these professional voice actors for Byleth and Eshmel. For Byleth they had Zaga Gular, and for Eshmel they hired Joshua Waters. But if what we know is any indication, they're mostly here for brief quips. I do not understand why you would voice act nearly the entire game and hire some insane voice talent, and they're just here for level up and selection quotes. And these are like the most important characters in the game. Which segues into a fundamental problem I personally have with these characters. They often take the spotlight when I'm always more interested in the other characters and their motivations and goals and outlook on the world. Both Three Houses and Fortune's Weave have some of the most intriguing protagonists Fire Emblem has ever had, and I am dying to know more about Leda and Dietrich and Theodora and Kai. I'm really glad that it's looking like Eshmel is not going to play a huge role in at least a big portion of Fortune's Weave, because it means there is more room for these four and their closest comrades. I'm hoping each of them will have a satisfying arc that comes to a proper close before they all have to unite with Eshmel to fight the big bad, and I have enough faith in the writing team that they will. But there is a part of me that fears that it's going to be unceremoniously shoved aside for something that I expect to be fundamentally less interesting. That said, let me be clear. I'm not upset or angry over things I have no idea about. All this is speculation, and I know that. I think a lot of what I've said so far, given past games and the glimpses we have had, are reasonable guesses mixed with some hopes and fears. Sometimes I see a post or a tweet like people are doomering when they haven't had a chance to play the game yet, but I think as long as you're realistic about your expectations and realistic about the fact that they are just that, expectations, there's nothing wrong with having this discussion. I also want to spend some time talking about why a lot of people do enjoy these characters. It's not my personal preference, but I think I get it. A very big one is romance. It's a game with pretty anime people, a very diverse group of pretty anime people at that. One of the most common questions I see on this game is romance confirmed yet? Can I marry the angry lady? Can I marry the buff dude? That person is hot. Do we know if we can marry him yet? Like it or not, Fire Emblem is now at least partially a wish fulfillment simulator because the powers that be have correctly determined that this is something people want. That also goes for the concept of self-insert in general. This is what a lot of people want. Not me, and not many more like me, but clearly it helps a lot of people feel like they are in this world rather than just playing a game with that world in it. It helps them feel like they're actually talking to these other characters instead of watching a conversation take place. It's an immersive experience, like the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. When I say I'm not happy with Byleth or Eshmel, I am fully aware that I am in the minority. These characters are ridiculously popular, especially in Japan but even in the West. I cannot overstate this enough. I can critique their writing and explain why I like it better without them until I'm blue in the face, but characters like them, and like the modern Persona protagonists for example, are generally just well liked. I can get hung up about it, get gatekeepery about it, and be like, these people wouldn't know good writing if it hit them in the face. But I don't want to be a gatekeeper about it. If people like Fire Emblem because of these characters, if they get into it because of these characters, I'm happy for them. I hope they can get into the games that don't have these self-inserts, but I'm not going to resent them for their preferences and choices. And after the last couple of games, it makes sense for intelligent systems to keep the avatar trend going. I do think it's possible that the games would sell just as well without a self-insert. We don't have a control group of games without a self-insert made and released under the exact same circumstances, and we never will. I think Three Houses was lightning in a bottle, and I really doubt Byleth is the only thing that helped sell it well. The premise of being able to choose a house, and it being released around the COVID pandemic, and it being exclusive to the, at the time, really popular Switch, all helps to boost it. I don't think anyone has the data to back up that any game would have sold better or worse had they made different choices with regards to Byleth, and I think the same is going to go for Fortune's Weave and Eshmel. All I know is I personally don't believe these games need a self-insert to be good or worth playing. Fire Emblem at its core just has very solid gameplay, and its characters come into their own just as well or better without an audience surrogate. But for so many people, these self-inserts have become a series mainstay, especially for those who enjoy romance. It's just not going to be the same without. I guess people who just enjoy shipping two characters together without necessarily having themselves in there could get their fill, but by definition, that's a smaller subset of a larger group. Hopefully, all of that added some nuance to the discussion about Eshmel and avatars in general, and provided some background to people new to Fire Emblem who don't know what this is all about. I've made it clear I'm not a fan of Eshmel and characters like him, but that doesn't mean I don't understand the appeal or why they're in these games for probably the foreseeable future. So, let's be chill about this in the comment section below and in general, and hope that there's enough to love for everyone in Fortune's Weave. I'll see you next time.